Hello, everybody. For those who are new, welcome. And if you have previously watched my content, then welcome back. I am Radhika, and today we are going to work with a DAX function called switch. So, without further ado, let's get started. We will be solving Power BI 2021 Week 8 challenge, and we are going to build this visual. In this, we first need to create a slicer, and then on the basis of the value chosen on the slicer, these values will change. So if I select total revenues, this chart will be for total revenues, total expenses, all of these data will be for total expenses, and total profits will show you total profits. Let's first import the data by clicking on import data from Excel. I'll just grab the file which I have already downloaded. I will click on all of these three sheets and click on transform data, which will open up the Power Query editor. Let's first check if all the data and the tables and everything is in the correct format. So going with conference dim, the column names are not correct. So let's choose use first rows as headers. This looks good. Finances fact, these look to be correct. And for school dim also, this looks to be correct. Click on close and apply. In the challenge, we need a slicer which has total revenues, total expenses, and total profit values that we can choose from. So for that, I am first going to create a table using enter data option. I'll name this table as measure values and column as measures, total revenues, total expenses, so that I can sort out these columns in my slicer just the way it is presented in the challenge. So measure rank. Total revenues is 1, expenses is 2, and total profits is 3. And I'll click on load. Now let's build our slicer. So for that, I'll go to measure values and bring the measures here and change it to a slicer. Now we want this to be a tile. So I'm clicking on slicer settings and changing it to a tile. And let's just increase the size and decrease it like that. Place it at the center. We don't need the title, so we turn off the slicer header. And now we can choose total expenses, total profits, and total revenues. Whenever we click on one of these values, we need to retain what we have clicked on. So for that, let's create measure. To do that, I'm again going to create another table in which I'm going to keep all my measures so that everything in one place. For that, I'll again click on enter data. I will rename this table as key measures and click on load. Now our key measures table is loaded on the right. I'm going to right click and click on new measure, and I am going to create measure which is going to retain the selection from this slicer. I will call it selected measure. That will be equal to selected value of the measure in measure values table. If I bring in this selected measure over here, currently total expenses is selected, which is why it's showing total expenses. If I click on total profits, it will show total profits. And then total revenues, it will show total revenues. So from this, we can understand what value is being selected from this slicer. I will quickly delete this column because we don't need this column. So now we need to create three measures which will calculate the values of these three measures: total expenses, total profits, and total revenues. So for that, I'm going to right click on key measures table and click on new measure. First, I will create total expenses, which is sum of the total expenses column given in the finances fact table. Again, I'll right click on key measures, choose new measure, and create total revenues, which is sum of total revenues in the finances fact table. And the last measure, total profits, which is sum of the total profits column in the finances fact table. We need only one measure to be displayed depending on whatever value is chosen in the slicer. For that, we're going to create another measure. And in this measure, we're going to use switch DAX function, which will help us in switching between these values. I will call this selected measure value, which will be equal to switch true. Now, if the selected measure is equal to total revenues, then we need the total revenues. If the selected measure is total expenses, we choose total expenses. And lastly, if the selected measure is total profits, then we select the total profits measure. Now, I will bring this selected measure value in here as a card visual. So currently total profits is chosen in the slicer. This card shows total profits and 3 billion is its value. Similarly, if I select total expenses, then total expenses in this card visual and 76 billion in the measure value. And for total revenues, it's again 79 billion with total revenues in this card visual. We need to create a few more measures, but before doing that, let's put it in a format that is required in the challenge. So the first thing that I'm going to do is reduce the size of the canvas. So let's click anywhere outside so that none of the visuals are selected and choose custom. And in that, let's choose 720 as height, and for width, reduce it to 600. At the top, we need a text box which says NCAA financials, revenues, expenses, and profits. And let's put it at the top. I'm making the size as 18 and this size as 12. Everything should be bold. For colors, I'm choosing similar colors as are there in the challenge. So revenues, for expenses, a dark gray color, and for profits, put it center aligned. Below that, we have our slicers. So I'm just putting them there. Next, we need to place the measure that is selected. So I have this card visual, but instead of this card visual, I'm going to choose the multi-row card because that gives me more flexibility in terms of aligning, which I am not getting using the normal card visual. So I've selected this visual. First of all, going into cards and turning off the accent bar because that's what we don't want. And this is the title, so I will increase the size of title to 18 and put it right across. I will reduce the padding in the bottom to 0 and increase the top padding to 15 just so we get it in the same way as we have in the visual. Now we need to have a green background behind everything. So for that, I will go to insert, create a shape which is a rectangle. I will put it from here till the very end, which will give me the full background color. Now this background color will be based on conditional formatting, and for that we will build the measure later. Let's put this to back. So going into format and sending it backwards. This card visual, which is the value of the selected measure, this will be placed somewhere here. And again, because I need the formatting to be left aligned, I'm using new card. And for call out values, I am putting it to 24. My labels should be below the value. They should not have any space between the label and the value, and decreasing the font size. I don't need borders around my card, so I will remove that. And this is how it looks for now. Let's start creating measures. So the first measure that we need to create is selected measure current year, we first need to know what is our current year. So for that, I'm going to create a measure. Now, I am doing this challenge in 2024. This is a 2021 challenge with data which is even prior to 2021. So for the current year, I'm going to choose the maximum year of the data available in the data set. Current year is maximum of year in the finances fact table. Now I will create measure, selected measure current year. First, I'm going to create a variable to store the current year, which will be equal to our current year measure. And then in return statement, I will use calculate because we need to change the context. Then we need to change the context for selected measure value. And the context that we need to bring back is finances fact year, the current year, which we get from the current year variable. Now we bring this measure here and see the value as 8 billion. I will put this in a multi-card because that is how it is in the challenge. This looks a little ugly, but we will make it beautiful after we have created all the measures that are required. So the next measure that we need to create is selected measure value, which is for the previous year. So we have our current year. I will create another measure, selected measure previous year. For that, first I will create a variable called previous year that will be equal to our current year measure minus 1. Now again I'll do a return statement and use a calculate because I need to change the context and we need to change context for selected measure value. And this time again our finances fact year should be equal to previous year. I will bring this one also. Now the last thing that we need is another measure for year over year change. So first, let's click on creating a new measure and say selected measure year over year. It's a percentage change. So first we need to find the difference and that will be selected measure current year minus selected measure previous year. And we will use a divide function so that we don't have to worry about the divide by zero scenarios because it is all handled by this function. We say divide this by the previous year and as an alternate result put it as 0 if there is ever a chance of getting a division by 0. I will put this as a percentage with one decimal point and I will bring this also here. Now the current year value is actually a dollar value. Similarly, the previous year value is also a dollar value. So I'm just updating the format. I will create another measure to decide what should be the color of these visuals and the background. So I am again going to use a switch function here. I'll name this color, which will be equal to switch true. If the selected measure is total expenses, then we need a gray color. If the selected measure is total revenues, then we choose the color. And if the selected measure is equal to profits, then we have, I'm going to first click on this blue shape, go to shape style, fill, and instead of a solid color, I'm going to choose conditional formatting. Format style will be based on a field value and the field will be color. Clicking on OK. So now when we select total expenses, it shows me the total expenses color. Total profits gives me this bright green color and total revenues gives this green color. These are not in the right order. I will go to this. Let's go to the data view. Going into measure values, click on the measures and sort by should be measure rank. Now if I go back, I have this in the same order as is in the challenge. I also need to change background for this one. So going into background, conditional formatting by field, and our field name is color. Clicking on OK. Color of the font should be white. Let's do it bold. Like that. Let's place this here. Or I'll give this one a padding of 25, and all of these also 25. We will create area chart. So for that, I'm going to click on area chart. On x-axis, we have year from the finances fact table. And on y-axis, we need to add the selected measure value. Now, when I click on this visual, let's just format it first. We don't want the y-axis title. We don't want the main title as well. Just increasing this. And now I need to format this again with the same colors as is our background. So for total expenses, we don't want this blue color, but this green color. If we go to lines right now and color, we can only select one color. There is no way we can apply conditional formatting. The workaround or the trick here is we will bring in the measures into legend, and then whatever legend you choose, it will show up here. So for total expenses, we will give it the total expenses color. Then if I select total profits and then again click on this one, I will again change the color to whatever profit color I want. It's too bright, so let me make this one a little lighter. And I'll just copy the color for total revenues as well. I'll click on total revenues, click on the area chart, and for total revenues, the color is this. Now, if we see total revenues is this green color which matches with the background, total expenses is also in the right color, and total profits area chart is also in the right color. One thing that we need to do is we don't need these measure and the legend. So because this is a workaround that we did to get the color right. So what I'm going to do is click on this area chart, go to formatting, and turn off this legend. So now if I go to total expenses, total revenues, everything looks neat. We still need to rearrange all of these, but we'll do that after we create the bar chart. So for bar chart, I'm going to select bar chart visual. On y-axis, we want the conference abbreviations. And on x-axis, for title, it should just be by conference. I'll decrease the size a bit. Turning off the title, turning off the x-axis title, y-axis titles because we don't need them. And for bars, we can do conditional formatting. So clicking on this, it should be by a field value, and our field value is color. And now if we click on total expenses, total profit, all of these change with the color. Now we need a white background behind all of these visuals, and we need a border which is similar to the color of the measure that we select. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a rectangle, and this rectangle should be white in color. So the fill should be white, and the border, for border color, I'm again going to choose our field value and the measure color that we have created. And I'm going to stretch it across all these visuals and format it to go backwards. We have that background and we have the nice little border as well. We will just turn off the backgrounds for all of these visuals because we already have a white background now. So turning off backgrounds, And the reason why I have turned out background is because we need this green border so that everything looks coherent. Let's just resize it and put it in the format that is in the challenge. Putting these here. So for total revenues, total expenses, total profits, everything is nice and neat. All the colors change as per the conditional formatting set. And that's for the challenge. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.